So, to the dev team, the very first thing that we need to talk about is the blunderbuss. The blunderbuss and guns in general. Hot swapping weapons should not remotely be possible, especially with guns. Now, you all have claimed, since about Season 6, that you have fixed this issue. Yet I still have run into players, which you can go back and watch my streams and look for. I have run into no short amount of players, and allow me to show you. Now, I would like to point out how much time it took me to do that, and I would like to point out that no matter what gun I use, no matter what weapon I use, there is no point in which that lessens by any amount. I could switch to having a pistol and dual pistol. Now, did you see how long it took? And that's with me, and I'll switch to mouse and keyboard, just because I'm using controller right now. Let's switch over to mouse and keyboard. All right, let's make sure we've got hot weapon swap, which... Okay. Bam. Bam. How many seconds would you say that was? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time, just for good measure. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll even do it again. Like I said, just for good measure. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 seconds is probably the quickest that you will be able to swap these weapons and do this. And yet, I am constantly running into players who, 1, 2, done. Now, this is a thing that you have promised everyone would be fixed. It has not been fixed. It has not been fixed with the blunderbuss. It has not been fixed with the pistols. It has not been fixed with the sniper rifles. It has not been fixed. The ability for people in under a half second to switch weapons and take you out has not been changed. Fix this. Our next issue happens to be with what is in the sky out there at this very moment. I do not have a problem with individual world events. By far, there's no way I should be complaining about individual world events. But I have to complain about one individual world event. See, for the past 3 years, I have been trying to get generous giving for all. An achievement that requires you to turn in 50 generous gifts. Generous gifts only spawn in skeleton towers. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if generous gifts spawned in skeleton towers. However, immediately following Season 8, the drop rate of a generous gift has dropped below 0.007%. Having played this game for literal days at times, I can promise you that that is not an oversight or an overstatement. You can get humble gifts out the wazoo. And the other thing is, people will turn to me and be like, yeah, but if you take a captain down and use the map with an X on it, it'll give you... It does not. That has a ratio of which is immeasurable due to the amount of times that captains do not drop, and X marks the spot map to begin with. This needs to be fixed. It has taken me 3 years to get 26 of these gifts, and I cannot get them playing on safer seas. The generous gift and humble gift only spawn in the skeleton towers that spawn in high seas. I play high seas because I enjoy the PvP, which is another area that I don't think needs to be addressed anymore. So what if I told you that if it wasn't bad enough that the spawn rate for the generous gift is low, too low to be acceptable, too low to even find one every week, I could play literally every day of the week for 8 hours a day, and I would not get a generous gift. The Burning Blade has become a cancer due to something else that has become a cancer. Now, what I am referring to in particular is the fact that you have included server merging. What is a server merge? A server merge is a forced exodus of players into a different server without their consent, without a request, without being sunk, sometimes without even being on their ship. But one of the biggest issues with this has been the Burning Blade. The Burning Blade is considered a world event. With you having turned the Burning Blade into a world event, something has happened. It becomes a player ship that is a world event. When a world event is on the map, no other world events will spawn. Now, I want you to imagine my frustration yesterday when after 3 hours of playing, what happened consistently every hour and a half was that a new Burning Blade would merge into the server I was in. You have put me in a position where my only choice for progress is to harass other players to the point that they will no longer want to play the game. When the third and final of the Burning Blades came in, I did not bother. I rammed their ship, I boarded them with kegs, I attacked everyone on, and then I reboarded them and attacked them over and over and over and over again until finally the captain of that crew quit the game. All of this because I want a skeleton fort, which only spawns 6% of the time. Because I want a gift out of that skeleton fort, which only spawns 0.0007% of the time. Even though the game actively advertises that it is a 50-50 drop on which one will spawn in the fort, it is always a humble gift instead of a generous gift. Now let's talk about the blunderbuss, because let's go back and forth on these topics kind of like you do every time you address them in an update. This is the blunderbuss. Let me go ahead and quickly show you how the blunderbuss works. If you aim the blunderbuss anywhere at any distance for any reason, you will notice a lovely spread of shots. This is not how the blunderbuss works at all during regular combat. If I approach an enemy at this range, literally putting myself, let's say the mast is the enemy. Oh, blam! Look at that hit. Look at that hit. That player will have taken that much damage, and even without benefits, such as cooked food, will not die. Meanwhile, somebody boarding me from this ladder here with the inability to pull a weapon, you cannot pull a weapon right now, until they get here, will manage to pull a weapon while still on this ladder, shoot me, and re-grab onto said ladder, then climb aboard and have killed me, even though 3 of those shots will have most certainly hit the ship instead of me. And that is regardless of whether I am standing here, 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 or whether I am standing here. Yet there is supposedly nothing wrong with this weapon. Now, people have been like, oh, well, strafing tactics make it so all the bullets hit. This is a tactic that I can blatantly prove wrong, and that through many streamers who have claimed such, show when they attack other enemies that that is not at all the case. It does not happen that way, it never has, and it never will. Now, while I have complained gratuitously about the generous giving issue, I need to now, and for the rest of this video, go over one major issue that you must address. We're going back to server merges. Server merges must be removed. Your dev team will claim that you can only be server merged out when your entire crew is on your ship. This is a lie. I have had people tell me that it will only server merge you when you are out at sea. This is a lie. It will only server merge you when you aren't in combat. this is a lie. Now, I can't be sure if it's broken code. I can't be sure if it's direct error on the dev team's side, but the fact that the lie that has been spread continuously is that server merges only happen when there is no guidelines for when server merges happen. I have been fighting skeleton captains. I have been fighting player crews. I have been merged out of games on so many different occasions in so many different scenarios that it is ridiculous. The other reason that server merges must be removed is because server merges still present a huge issue with loot. A server merge can duplicate loot. A server merge can steal loot. And this is a hard fact that players must learn. And for new players, I have to assume it would be one of the worst things to experience ever. If you are not looking directly at your loot, be it on the ship or in the ocean, when a merge happens, your loot will despawn. I have had an entire ship of loot emptied because a server merge occurred. Server merges must be removed. They are not created by players. They are created by the servers and most likely by the moderation team, as there seems to be no right or reason to when they do or do not happen. In the many things that you have done right, these are glaring issues that cannot be ignored. In every way that you have wished to improve the game, you have equally damaged it. Server merges are the biggest bane. When a server merge happens and brings a blade into a server I am in, I cannot get to a world event that I need. When I clear world events to attempt to get the world event I need, the server will merge me out and force me to repeat the process with 3 or 4 world events that I have already done. Another huge issue, glaring issue with world events, is what you have done to the player base with skeleton forts in general. As an Order of Souls, you can get a custom skeleton fort mission to spawn. As a gold hoarder, you can get a custom skull fort world event to spawn. As a merchant alliance, you can get a custom skull fort world event to spawn. This would not be an issue if there was any indication that these were custom spawned world events. Unfortunately, there is no such indication that that is the case. And given that there is no differentiation in world events for certain things, such as the Athena's tornado versus the Ghost Ship tornado, a skull fort versus a custom skull fort, this has led me to wasting time attacking people with no reason. I have tried to clear them off of forts in the attempt to get the one tiny piece of loot that I am after, because I've had no other options. No other options. There are no other avenues available to me to complete this one task. In fact, quite ironically, you have made generous giving for all impossible to achieve, and by the actions I have had to take to try to achieve it, you have made it the most ungenerous thing I can imagine. If I had known that people were doing a custom skull fort, I wouldn't attack them off of it. None of the loot there is what I need. And let me explain. I have played this game enough that I almost have 10 million gold. If you look at my history in this game, I have had up to 20 million gold before, and spent most of it on all of the aesthetics that I wanted for the game, none of which are currently present because I didn't feel like decorating the ship for this purpose, because I don't have a problem with getting custom skins. I don't have a problem with the way that the game's gold system is set up. I don't have issues with that. I have an issue with the way that server merges ruin gameplay, the way that weapon swapping has not been fixed, the way that we are still having slingshotting issues that we have had since Season 8. The Hourglass. These are broken beyond reason, and you have yet to provide players with a reasonable excuse for the amount that this is broken. If you were to go into an Hourglass battle, you can be sent to a server without an opponent. Your only choice then will be to sink your own ship. If you do not, the server will do so for you eventually. Thus meaning that people who have been successfully doing Hourglass battles will eventually end up in a scenario that they cannot win and have to forego and forfeit all of that profit and all of that effort. And they will have to surrender it merely because the game chose not to properly connect them to an opponent, or the opponent dropped out. In either case, since there is no auto-win scenario set for that, or no auto-dismissal, you will be stuck in a circle that, if you leave, is considered a loss and lose all of your progress and sink your ship. On top of that, when an empty one is not the issue, you have the exact opposite. There are times where you attempt to connect and never can, and then the game stalls out, leaving you underwater forever in a transitioning state. And I do mean forever. I understand that wait times to connect to another player can be long, but once 15 minutes has passed, it is unacceptable that it does not recognize and attempt to disconnect that player and put them back into the open waters of the server from which they came, or the server of which they were connected to, or the server, or a new server. These are problems that Arena did not have. These are problems that should not continue to be the scale they are. Your boss combat, most of the melee combat, and most of the gun combat without hot swapping weapons has been perfect. But the glaring issues can't be ignored. And as much as I am sure you would like them to be ignored, I actually could have used him for a prime example of the blunderbuss. Even though he is an AI, I could have stood directly in front of him with the health I have right now, taken that blunderbuss shot, and not died. And people will argue, well, yeah, but the AIs do less damage, the bots do less damage than the players. And that's a fair assessment. Unfortunately, it does further the point that the blunderbuss has no right being as strong as it is in the hands of players. The fact that it can one-shot from any distance is ridiculous. Now, while I do despise spawn campers, I don't have a reasonable suggestion on how to fix that, because of the other bugs that would cause. And let's be clear, while I am not a strong suit for coding, I can promise you that if I had to ask you to make a mechanic that would automatically kick invading players off of a ship after a certain amount of time, the bugs that would open elsewhere in coding, and the bugs that would open for player-to-player ship combat, would be almost never-ending. I cannot imagine, so I would not ask for such an unreasonable solution. Spawn camping is part of the game. You have given us the best option, which is to sink the ship. There are no complaints there. You have expanded this map and made it wide enough that you can run from, loop, and attack other players at any given time, coming out of the clear blue through the fog, hidden behind objects, or even by merging in. There's nothing wrong with that, except for server merging. Due to the problems that server merging creates, it must be removed. Even if that means that from now on, people who lose connection to the server must go back to the main screen and then join back in and lost all their loot. That is better than the alternative, which is I can have a ship stacked to the brim with loot. And because I just so happened to be looking left when the server merge started, I will turn after a merge and the loot will be gone. Vanished from existence. Though nobody has boarded me, I have not been attacked, and nothing else has gone wrong. It will simply have disappeared. Server merges should not be able to take place during combat. Server merges should not be able to take place while you are on an island and not on your ship. Server merges should not be able to happen if you are in a full lobby. Server merges should not happen. Change generous giving so that it can be a completed task again. Increase the spawn rate of the generous gift and stop pretending that that is not an issue and is not undeniably impossible to complete nowadays. Also, since I know server merging will take a long time to fix unless it is just directly cut off, make it so if you are on the burning blade and it server merges, you are put back on your ship and the blade is taken away. I have measured the amount and the cost of the blade. It is not a huge loss to take the blade away from a team. It is not. And given the fact that the blade is considered a world event and will therefore prevent other world events from spawning when it server merges, it must be removed from the ability to server merge. I've enjoyed the story. I've enjoyed the game. I've enjoyed looting. I've had a fun time laughing with other players. But I am through listening to patch notes and story progression and this, that, and the other when there are major flaws like this. In the meanwhile, so you are aware, throwing knives can still be exploited to duplicate loot. The burning blade, though you have put out an announcement looking to fix this, can still be exploited to duplicate loot. The skeleton fortresses, very uniquely added to the game, can be exploited to duplicate loot and duplicate value. Something that you have recently addressed as a will-be-fixed concern. But these are glaring issues with the actual gameplay that have no reason to be ignored. Server merges need to be removed. The generous giving achievement and the generous gift need to be accommodated to be achievable. And I am not asking you to make it so that it drops every single time. I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking you to just hand me the achievement because of the amount of time and effort I've put into it. I will willingly continue to go to Skullforts. I am asking that I be given the opportunity to do these things. With the percentages as low as they are, I would once again tell you that I have spent 3 years trying to get one accommodation, one achievement completed, to get one skin. That I have made 20 million gold in the effort to do that. And I have spent that gold and am nearly back at 10 million gold now from doing nothing more than playing the game. I am at a point now where every time I go out and do a mission, I take my loot, find a cooperative team, and give them everything that I have hauled in for the day. I spend my time helping new members. Once I am done achieving my task, I will help them do their tasks and leave them all the loot in the meanwhile. Because all I am trying to achieve is a ship set and to continue to enjoy PvP battling in this game the way it was meant to be. A sandbox of fun, guts, and glory. This video won't be seen, won't be recognized, won't even be heard by the dev team. So, I would like to thank you very much for your time. I would like to thank you very much for this game. I would like to thank the community of this game for the great experiences that I have had with it, despite having taken months upon months away from it, simply because I grew tired of chasing an unachievable task that is so minute in the grand scale of this game, it's ridiculous. I would like to thank you all for watching, for any possible future resolutions to these issues. And in the meantime, gold, guts, and glory.